recording on.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to UNNC Planning and Zoning committee meeting for today, which is October 20th. And first item we have on the agenda before we even start is a formality that we have to go through at every meeting from here on out, at least once a month. And we have to make this following announcement. It's a determination to continue to hold meetings virtually. This is COVID related. And the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners and the Department, thank you, Laura, and the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, with guidance from the City of Los Angeles attorney, have established that the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners has the authority to adopt AB 361 findings pursuant to Government Section Code 54953E1B-C on behalf of the city's neighborhood councils, and determine that due to COVID-19 state of emergency, meeting in person would present imminent risks to the health and safety of attendees. And this meeting is therefore being conducted virtually pursuant to that directive. So this is per the expiration of the original directive from Governor Newsom, which expired at the beginning of October. So until something changes or they have a new approach, we have to declare that at the beginning of the meeting. Okay, so that's item number one. Item number two, welcome everybody and we call to order. And my name is John Arnold. I am the Region 6 representative for UNNC and the chair of the UNNC Planning and Zoning Committee. And with me is Laura Myers. Laura?
Hi, I'm at-large representative. I live in Angeles Vista, and I'm currently both co-chair of this committee and currently president of UNNC.
Anyone else who wants to introduce themselves? Teresa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, John. I'm Teresa Masonette. I'm also on the board of the UNNC, and I represent the West Adams Avenues. Thank you.
Anyone else? Eric, do you want to introduce yourself? Or anybody else?
Hi, Eric Barlow. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for STEM Prep Schools. We operate two schools in the UNNC boundaries, Math and Science College Prep on Adams and Arlington, and Crown Prep Academy co-located with 24th Street Elementary at 24th and Western.
Great.
Glad to be here.
Oliver, if you wish to introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Oliver Baker. I'm with the applicant for item number 5.
Brittany.
Hi everyone, I'm glad to be here. My name is Brittany. I'm a neighbor and community organizer with Redeemer Community Partnership.
And a frequent attendee of this committee. Thanks for coming again. And then Mr. Gonzalez, I understand you're an applicant as well.
Please call me Michael. Mr. Gonzalez makes me feel old. Thank you for the time. I'm an old friend of Laura's, and I'm here representing the applicant on item number 5, and I look forward to answering any questions this committee might have.
Great, and thanks for coming tonight. The next, I will entertain anyone to make a motion to approve the agenda or to suggest any amendments to the agenda.
Okay, I'll move to approve the agenda, John.
Can I have a second, please? Okay, I'll second that. I'm being shy today. Please raise your virtual or real hand if you approve the agenda as presented. Okay, I see Laura and I didn't see any other hands. Please raise your hand that for approval. Thank you, Teresa. Then anyone raise your hand to disapprove of the agenda? Okay, seeing none, agenda is approved. Let's go on to item number 3, public comments. Anyone who has a public comment on anything that is not agendized this evening, 1 to 2 minutes per speaker. Anyone wish to speak on anything? Please raise your virtual or real hand. God, I'm the only one on camera. Okay, that's Laura. Seeing none for a public comment, we're going to move on to item number 4, review and informational discussion of recently passed state housing legislation, including SB 9 and SB 10, and their potential implications in the UNNC area. I proposed this item on the agenda because I think there's been a lot of misinformation, hyperbole, misunderstanding about what SB 9 and SB 10 in particular are. And I think those are the two recent bills that have gotten a lot of press attention, and that may or may not have the most impacts based on our land uses in the UNNC area. Of course, there's been a whole slew of legislation for housing over the past month or two. And there's some pretty big ones, including AB 2345, which adds a lot of height and stories, and just a lot for any project that is 100% affordable or permanent supportive housing. That could have impacts along some of our boulevards, especially those boulevards that are near transit. But those will be very particular projects. SB 9 and SB 10 are more comprehensive in their breadth of how it affects certain land uses, and a lot of what our zone is made up of. So if I may, I will just jump in and just tell you what I know about each of these. SB 9 is the one that I think I hear most about. People say, oh, single family zoning is gone. I'm going to have an apartment building next to me. And I think people have visions of what's happening in some neighborhoods that are zoned R3, R4 for multifamily housing, that have houses and then a large 7 or 8 story building pushed up to the curb, and then more houses. So that is wrong. What SB 9 allows is for any single family residence to divide their lot into 2 with a minimum lot size of 1,200 square feet. And there's a whole bunch of rules around this. And you can either divide the lot and put two duplexes, or you can put 1 duplex on the lot in any R1 zone. What's been the misinformation I think is going around, that all the R1 rules still apply for setbacks, FAR, and height still applies. So most of the R1 historic districts are exempt. Most of the R1 districts already allow for 35 feet of height and 5-foot setback. So no R1 lot is excluded from having a 3-story building 5 feet from the property line. So none of that has changed. Developers can't buy R1 houses, develop them into duplexes and sell them or rent them. One of the rules is you have to live in one of the units. You have to sign a covenant for 3 years. So that's really the intent, is for homeowners to put more housing on their lots. It's also forbidden to evict anybody or to tear down rent controlled or any other kind of rental housing that has been lived in the past 3 years. So it makes the rule is really restrictive of what you can do. And I want to share what I did as I looked around. I scanned around West Adams, looking for lots that look like they had development on it already. Don't know what their zones are, that may look like a lot that's divided in 2 and has two duplexes that have a little bit of bulk to them. A lot of people are calling this old-fashioned density. And up until the 1980s and 1990s, most of the neighborhoods in Los Angeles allowed for bungalow courts for 4 units on a lot. And that all went away fairly recently. It was most of our history allowed for multifamily housing for some density, 2, 3, 4 units on a lot. I don't know the exact history of that, but they're looking to go back to that, to have light density, just to absorb more housing into single family zones. So I'm going to share a couple of images. Hold on 1 second, I should have these. Maybe I won't. And I took the wrong zip drive with me. I will get that later. So I'm going to, basically what it looks like Sorry, I have the wrong drive. Basically what it looks like is two-story houses that are separated. They have to be 10 feet apart. You can't join them together into one apartment building. That's not allowed. They're basically two apartment buildings or two duplexes that can be on the lot, and they can be up to 35 feet tall. But there's so many, even though a lot of parcels could be used for this purpose, finding that right owner, the right situation, the no renters is going to be few and far between. So the risk of having all of Jefferson Park, of all of Angeles Vista turning into, that are R1 zoned, turning into duplexes is pretty light, is pretty low. And then all historic districts are exempt from it. So that does not apply to historic districts. So I just want to, any questions on that's SB 9? Any questions on that? I'll try to answer. I'm not an expert, but I did a little homework on it. Laura?
Yeah, so actually, John, did they, in the legislation, if you know, did they define the phrase historic district?
I haven't read the whole thing in detail. I'm guessing that is defined somewhere, and I'm guessing HPOZs apply, but that I'm not sure.
Well, I'm really wondering about the city's 11 character residential overlays and maybe more in progress in other parts of town. And there's a couple of, I want to say legend, but that's the wrong word, but there's a couple of in council, in CD9, there's a few other overlays for districts that are, I'm going to say legendary, it's the wrong word, but it's a legacy districts. So they all have historic preservation components to them, but I don't think the city has gone through the effort of adding them to this state list. And then similarly, what about national register districts or consent decree? I mean, these are questions that I probably am guessing you don't know the answer to,
Yeah,
but we have all over UNNC things that are not known to people where we have consent agreement, national register districts, little ones, little pocket ones where they use federal funds to do a road, for example. I mean, in your area, 31st Street, just west of Arlington is also a national register little pocket.
It sounds to me like the intent is to remove historic districts from of eligibility to apply SB 9. That sounds like the intent, and until we find out differently, I think we can, anyway, that's what the intent is.
Okay.
We don't do more research. So
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Maybe we should do some more research.
yeah. So I think what, again, I heard a few people say, we're going to have apartment buildings next door to us and we can't do anything about it. And that's just not true. There's so many hoops to jump through to get this to apply that I think it's going to have, I think it's going to have very little impact that we'll see day to day. And we are seeing tear downs because the owner has to live there and they have to tear down their own house if they're going to do a scrape and do 2 new duplexes. So I think it's very complex. And I think it's going to be a lot of homeowners that just don't want to do it. And a lot of developers that don't want to live there in one of the units. So I think it will be complex. Any other questions on SB 9? Okay, so SB 10 is much different. And what that allows is around transit, similar to TOC, and a ring around transit. They are allowing cities to upzone R1 districts without going through a CEQA or an environmental process. Right now, if there's going to be a zone change that's as dramatic as going from R1 to R3, there has to be an environmental process to get that done, which is a very public process, an appealable process. It's very difficult to get that done. What this SB 10 allows cities to do, not developers, but cities, is to propose upzoning around transit centers. What a city would have to do, so that won't be a clandestine process. It won't be as public process if there was a CEQA process involved with it, but it will be a political process. For example, if a council member advocates for changing, say, all the, whatever the ring around the corner of Western and Expo is, whatever that area is that falls under SB 10, to be upzoned, it will be a political process because there'll be a discussion about it. CEQA may not be involved, but it'll be a politically dangerous to do that if the community is against it. And what that does do, it does allow R1 districts to be upzoned to have 10 units per lot, which does get into apartment building zone. But what this isn't a developer process. A developer can't go in on SB 10 and say, I'm going to take my single family house and put 2 units on it. There has to be a zone change, and it's the zone change process that has changed, and that won't be opaque, we hope, or behind closed doors, we hope, if things get upzoned. That said, it's very feasible that there might be a proposal to upzone some R1 districts that are around transit, and that will have some component of a public process. It just won't be a CEQA process, which is onerous and makes it very difficult to happen without public support. Any questions on SB 10? I think SB 10 is the one that it's going to take longer. It will have a ripple effect that will be very, very slow. Any questions on that? Okay, hearing none.
Well, here, I've got my hand up now.
Okay.
John, do you think that would happen outside? I mean, I know it could happen, but do you think here in LA, it would happen outside any community plan updates anyway? Because I mean, all this stuff we've been doing with the housing element, they seem to be applying most of the intended upzoning to accommodate more units in the community plans that are scheduled for updating anyway, and in particular for community plans in the high opportunity zones. So the only question, again, from your research, is whether or not the city would also be considering those communities that are not scheduled for community plan updates, but which are high opportunity areas, wherever those may be.
I would think so. I think that would be a slow process, but I would say yes, and that might not have anything to do with SB 10. That would be totally separate, it sounds like. So I would think that'd be the more politically expedient way to do it, rather than relying on state law. But I think it depends on what cities are in dire straits to produce housing, because there are mandates for every community to have enough zoned land to comply with their quota numbers, which are called RHNA numbers, RHNA. So I can see cities that really need to get stuff done, that have a lot of public opposition, that their hand might be forced to upzone areas to get more units to get their RHNA numbers. LA is not in that boat. LA has done a lot to zone land and provide for housing. So I think the SB 10 might be a lot more, what's the word? It might be affecting communities that have less land zoned for multifamily housing that have transit. Okay, I put the Mercury News up in San Jose had a very brief article a few weeks ago outlining SB 9 and SB 10. I thought it was helpful to get it in a synopsis that's easy to read. So I put that in the chat if anyone wants to share that. Okay, moving on.
It's the Western and 24th Street stuff.
Okay, moving on to item number 5. We're having a presentation or a question and answer period for this project that's proposed, both being constructed and proposed at the corner of 24th and Western at the addresses shown on the agenda, which is 2211, basically 2211 through 2331, and then 2003, 2011 to 2029 West 24th Street. So Laura, you
Yeah,
probably know.
John, it's not really a presentation unless
Yeah.
with 24-hour notice, Michael has come up with a whole presentation. Have you, Michael? Or I think it's more that I'm showing a few things and we're going to have a discussion. Is that correct?
Sorry, Laura, you broke up there. What was the question?
Oh, you did not in the last 24 hours create an actual presentation, correct?
No,
just-
we're here
We're here to
listen.
talk.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're here to listen.
So a little bit of history, and Laura, you'll be able to, let me give a big lay person's view of what is happening. So this is the site, it's between the freeway and 24th on the western, just south of the freeway on the west side of Western. There's a big adaptive reuse project that's been under construction. I think it's finished. It's the one that has all the colored balcony guardrails on it. And that was permitted several years ago, I think before COVID. Here, thank you. And that's what you see at 2231 Southwestern. That is an old building, an old medical building that was converted into residential. Is there a commercial component there, Laura?
Yes, a little bit, right? Michael,
Little
just a tiny bit, right?
A very tiny bit, if anything.
And then there's a bunch of parcels here. There's been, and the lot next to it, which started construction a few months ago at 2221 Western, we understood to be a hotel when we came through UNNC about 2 years ago. And at some point along the way that changed. And that will probably be one of the biggest questions we have is what changed? What was the process that changed it? And that is now under construction to be a multifamily building with 48 dwelling units at the DU on that lot instead of the hotel. And what is being proposed, which is not yet permitted, which has some entitlement hoops to jump through, is that big gray area surrounding the whole parcel. The applicant can talk further about that, but that is a larger building with 364 units with access off of 24th Street, no access off of Western because it's too close to the freeway. Off-ramp would not be allowed, but this would be a more traditional mixed-use building. I believe it's mixed use. Courtyards, and I think it's 6 or 7 stories. But the applicant can go into more detail about that.
Right.
So we got something that's finished, under construction, and proposed. Obviously, the under construction is limited to what we can say about it, except to find out what the process was and how it happened and why it happened. And then you get some insight into that. So we know who our neighbors are and why they're going to be there. And then the big gray building around it, that one still has a lot of process to go through. So that will be coming to us for further review and input. And maybe the applicant can walk us through that,
Right.
what that process will be and what we might expect over the coming months.
Yeah, John, I have a couple of other images. So I'm going to stop this share and show a couple of other things quickly, and they're one by one. Sorry about that. Just because. And of course, once again, trying to figure out where they are on my desktop. So this is a, if you can see it, a rendering of the east and the south elevations of the newly proposed project. I don't know how much of the east elevation we will see from Western because there'll be a building or two in front of this. And so again, that'll be part of our conversation tonight. And all of these things I can bring back up, but I'm just trying to do this. So I have some photos, and that's what I'm looking at on my computer to see. Oh, here we go. I think this is it. We've already looked at that. So that's the, I think that's a photograph, a current, more or less current photograph of the former Doctors Hospital building as it has been adaptively reused into the housing project. So that is on the actual corner of Western and 24th. And we just looked at a different version of that. I'm going to keep going. Okay, that's it that I have here. And I know I have, because Michael sent me one other.
Also get it, Laura. Want me to get it?
Here, I got it. And this is the building under construction. So 2221 Southwestern, and there's actually 3 images here. So I'm gonna slide on
So just,
down.
Laura, before you go for this one, the beige box at the right is the doctor's hospital,
At the left, at the left.
at the left rather. And then what you don't see, what's not in the image, is the proposed building that would be basically wrapping around this one. So you'd see it on the right behind those trees. You'd see it through the slot between the beige building and the rendered building. And it would be, I think, a couple stories taller than this. So this building would basically be surrounded by the new proposed project.
Right. So this is more dead on.
Mhm. Again, you'll see the proposed project will be on the right, the doctor's building to the left.
Yeah. And here, and this is the north facing and east facing facade.
So basically where that tree is above the bicyclist on the right, that would be right behind that will be the new proposed building. I'm sorry, is it 7 stories? I didn't count.
I think, is it 8 stories? I think it's 8 stories, the new building. So again,
Yeah,
Michael,
it's
Oliver.
Correct. It's 8 stories.
Okay.
So I think the basic questions are tell the story of what's happening, what happened at 2221, what's happening with the proposed building, what we might expect for process for the proposed building, and especially what incentives, programs are being used to get the FAR height, density, or anything else that you're needing for the proposed building. And also, in your opinion, what might be some of the issues that we might confront. And I know one of the big ones is going to be about access off of Western and 24th, and how 24th is the traffic onto 24th is managed on and off of Western. So I'll hand the mic.
So
over
John,
to
I
you,
just
Oliver.
posted one more thing. So you can see this is what would be on Western and facing the freeway in a way.
So freeway on the right, the green
And the little
building that we
little
talked
green
about.
building. See, now
Um,
it's a little building. The 5-story building is a really little building on the left.
So anyways, I think those are, I covered some of the general points, but Oliver or Michael, if you want to tell a story, we're all ears.
Thank you, John. I mean, we were here more to listen than to story tell, so we're going to keep our comments brief. I just want to correct the misconception that 2221 property was previously a hotel. The hotel project was actually proposed by a different property owner at that time, north of the 2221, am I saying that correctly? 2211 property, which is now part of the proposed project that looks like an L, and it was at the corner, the northwest corner of Western and the freeway. After the entitlement process by the prior owner, the current applicant acquired that property and decided not to proceed with a hotel project because it didn't make sense. The 2211 project is a by right project that is not obtaining any kinds of permissible deviations based on incentives or concessions. It's not asking for any variances. It's not asking for anything. It went right to building permit and is allowed on that property.
Right.
I'm not sure how familiar.
If I could just jump in, and so everyone in the audience, by right means it's entirely conforming with no discretionary reviews, including coming to UNNC, planning and zoning committee, anything. It's all by right, so it's entirely compliant, with the zoning code. And so that's why this building is new to us, and we just saw it under construction, is because it's by right. So I'm sorry, Michael, please proceed.
That's okay. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the site, but the balance of that site, the majority of it, in fact, adjacent or between the hospital building and what is now the 2211 building under construction, and what was then the proposed hotel, was zoned parking. That parking zone was there for decades. That parking zone previously served the hospital use that went away. Goodness, I don't remember exactly when, but many, many years ago. That parking zone was not updated until the community plan was updated with West Adams. And we know that the plan was updated first, and then 2 years later, I believe, is when the CPIO or the zoning tools came into place and changed the zoning designation of the majority of that property from parking to commercial, which now allows for residential uses, which is why now you're seeing the proposed project.
Great. And just so everyone knows, the parking zone is a relic of the 1950s and 60s, and it's highly restrictive. You can't do anything with it but put parking on it. And so the city is doing its best to get rid of those zones because they're highly restrictive. So it sounds like that happened. And that sounds like why, part of the reason why the hotel project went away, because now this whole parcel, the L-shaped parcel, can become a much more comprehensive project without the albatross of this parking zoned parcel. Is that kind of correct?
It is an albatross, and they still exist in some parts of the community. And you know, in a world that's trying to move away from greenhouse gas producing vehicles, parking zones are sort of the antithesis to all of that.
So I have a zillion questions, and I wanted, I'll try not to be ADD about it and jump around. So what kinds of incentives and discretionary approvals or programs for density or whatever you need are you asking for the L-shaped project?
Certainly. We are looking at a state density bonus project for this property. We are seeking, excuse me, let me open that back up, an FAR of 3.25. We are seeking a density bonus of 45%. We are seeking, give me 1 second here.
I do have your attachment A. Do you want me to share that?
No, Laura, I just pulled it up, Laura.
Okay, fine.
I got it here just so we can walk through
Yeah,
it.
I mean, it'd be easier just to talk about it than to post it anyway.
Yeah, of course. So it's all related to the state density bonus program. And again, as I mentioned, it's a 45% density bonus. We are seeking reduced parking per AB 744. We are seeking an on-menu incentive to reduce required open space by 12%. We are seeking an off-menu incentive for FAR of 3.25, as well as waivers of development standards to reduce interior side yards, rear yards, and to allow a waiver of transitional height, as well as a temporary reduction in parking. We also have to seek site plan review because we are a project that provides more than 50 dwelling units, as well as more than 50,000 square feet of residential. The proposed project is 364 dwelling units with 70,220 square feet of commercial on 2 floors, closest to the freeway.
And I'm sorry, what's the AB that you're using for
734.
734? And what does that hinge on? Does that hinge on affordability? Is it one of the density bonus adds?
Yes, it's one of the density bonus revising bills. It's AB 744, not 34. The city's implementation of 65915, that's the government code section that authorized the density bonus, or that mandates it, not authorize it, but mandates the density bonus. That's the correct term to use here. The city only reflects old parking options that were built into a comprehensive overhaul of that government code section by SB 1818 back in 2005. AB 744, I believe, was adopted in 2013. The city, in its inherent slowness, has not updated its ordinance. This bill allows additional parking reductions when you're close to transit, specifically when you're close to rapid lines, and we are close to a rapid line with a stop both at Adams and a stop above us at Washington. So we qualify for that reduction based on transit proximity as well as the amount of affordability that we're providing.
And what is that amount of affordability?
15% of our base density. The numeric unit count is, give me 1 second here, 38 dwelling units are provided at very low income.
And then, so just for everyone who's listening, developers, especially in Los Angeles, have a variety of different programs they can choose from and to increase density and to use incentives and concessions. This particular project sounds like it's using the density bonus, which is SB 1818, as adopted by the city of Los Angeles. And over the past couple of years, past few months, actually, the state has had a number of add-on provisions to SB 1818, which allow for, some of them have to do with parking, some have to do with more density and how close you are to transit. And if you're providing 100% affordable housing, you get a lot more perks with height and stories. But this project is not that, so it's not tapping into the 100% affordable. The other programs that we're all familiar with, TOC is one of them, because this developer is using density bonus, they cannot use TOC, so this is not a TOC project. And there's also the CPAO, which has its own affordability program built into it. It also forbids the mixing and matching of different programs. So this developer is using SB 1818 and its add-ons by the legislature since it was adopted many years ago. And so that sounds like what they are going to be using to create the mass setbacks, parking, open space, everything else that they're proposing on this site. I have a question about, there's some R1 across the street. I can't remember what the zone is next door to you to the west, but can you talk about the transitional heights? Is there a incentive that you're using to mitigate some of the transitional heights that are usually required near R1?
Yeah, and the R1 is to the south of us. To the west of us would be R3 across Western. There is a portion of the building that would be subject to transitional height if we were not using the density bonus program. But the state law has, in addition to incentives and concessions, which we're using, the state law has a waiver of development standards. And the finding is that the development regulation would physically preclude the construction of the building with the bonus and with the incentives and concessions authorized by the state law. In essence, the state law was designed to incentivize the marketplace to produce affordable dwelling units, which do not return on cost. In fact, you lose from cost, and markets respond to market incentives. The law allows for additional units to make up that lost revenue, as well as larger buildings. And when those buildings can't be built by other regulations, Sacramento thought, well, we need to be able to make sure those buildings get built with the things that we're giving, which are the bonuses, the increased FAR, the increased height, et cetera. We are not in an otherwise height restricted zone here. We're just subject to the transitional height for the part of the building from 24th Street stretching back maybe 75 feet. I don't have the exact figures in written down.
Basically, everyone, transitional height is a tool that's been in the zoning code for a long time, that a lot of the housing programs try to mitigate, which says within 50 feet of R1, 100 feet of R1, and 200 feet of R1, you have to reduce the height of the building by steps. And it sounds like, because this building's across the street, you're in the 100 to 200 foot zone of that, which only allows 61 feet of height. And with density bonus, you can only get 11 more feet. So it sounds like they're tapping into that to get a little more height within that 100 to 200 feet distance from the R1. Is that correct? Or are you within the 50 to 100 zone as well?
I don't have the specifics on me right now, John, but I do know that we are requesting relief from that because it would physically preclude construction of the building.
So the biggest impacts, obviously, when you have abutting lot lines and having a building towering over an R1, and they really try to mitigate that.
So I want to correct something. We
Yeah.
don't have abutting lot lines. We are
Yes.
across the street from an R1
Yes.
zone, but they do not abut. There is a public right of way that separates us from that R1 zone.
Correct. That's what I was alluding to. That's most impactful when you're abutting, and the transitional heights get looser when you're as far away as across the street, which
Correct,
it sounds
yes.
like this project is doing.
Correct.
Access. Can you talk about the access to the projects? What is off of Western, either for 2221 or the proposed projects? How they share access, how they share what is shared across property lines, and then also what is the DOT rules about access off of Western, what you're proposing off of 24th, how that's all going to work, because I think this is a congested stretch of Western, fast, right off the freeway, 24th. And so I'm wondering what your proposal, what the idea is or intent is behind that.
John, if I may also, before Michael answers,
Sure.
in part, this is an important question because as we worked on the prior projects and their approvals, the entire discussion was about shared access, but also about accessing through 24th Street to avoid the lack of safety that there might be from cars trying to go back and forth across Western, right, south, directly south of the freeway on ramp, off ramp. And so I'm personally a little surprised to see that there's some degree on the plot on the site plan that is showing access right in the middle of Western, when the previous discussions, and I think, Michael, you were there for some of it, totally was going to consolidate the egress onto 24th.
So Mike, I'm sorry, Michael, I know I just asked you a question. I'm gonna give a visual to everybody about the zoning on this parcel. So I'm gonna share my screen real quick to show you what's going on. So this is what we're looking at. So the big pink area at the corner of Western and 24th, that's a commercial zone. That's what we are talking about. C2 is it's a commercial zone. 1 is the height district. O is oil. CPIO means it's a CPIO, which in this case is the South Los Angeles CPIO. PF is public facilities, which is the freeway and a school. And then the yellow that you see to the south was what we were just talking about. That's the R1 zoning, which kind of emanates a height reduction across the street and probably goes up maybe 200 feet. It's probably about halfway up that first lot where that dotted line is, right under C21 CPIO, somewhere in there is probably about 200 feet. So that's where the impacts are on that. You can see the freeway off ramp is right here. And as we all know, because we've all driven down it, there's a median divider that has boulder rocks in it. And it's you can't cross, you can't turn off of that. And I think you really can't get access across Western, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere in this zone. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's right in here, almost where the Ave is in Western, maybe a little bit further north. Anyway, Michael, so that all said, if you could talk about access and how the projects talk to each other, use each other's, have easements over each other, or whatever is going on.
Sure. Give me 1 second here. I'm just looking at an aerial image to.
1 minute, I can switch to that if you want.
No, I've got it here. Great. Yeah, there is a small median-ish. I wouldn't even call it a median. It's median-ish triangular element in the middle of the street closest to the intersection of Western and the 10 below. There is an off-ramp. That's actually the off-ramp, forgive me. It looks like it's below on the image. So, we are proposing, as Laura noted, some access off of Western, mostly for commercial, but also for some residential, as well as from 24th Street. DOT, as part of our application process, will review all of these items. I don't think DOT has an outright prohibition on access from Western. I don't believe there's a rule that says that. Safety will, of course, be factored into their analysis, but I'll leave that to their expertise once they review our proposal, which is forthcoming in our environmental review process. Well, actually, in our non-CEQA process, because the CEQA process no longer really concerns itself with access and circulation. The CEQA process, in terms of traffic impacts, is more concerned with reducing vehicle miles traveled, which then results in less greenhouse gas emissions, which, you know, in a perfect world staves off climate change. So that's evolved too. So DOT will look at circulation from a local level, not from an environmental impact standpoint, but from a local level to ensure that we have safe access here. So that's still in process.
Is there any connection from 2221 to the bigger project? I know there's a fire lane that goes around. Is that more than a fire lane? Is that a driveway that connects to the parking for the larger project? What goes on in that courtyard that surrounds 2221?
There is access from those driveways into the residential or the parking structure for the larger project.
Is that through easements and I assume they'll have to be phased in a way that 2221 can operate independently?
I don't know. I don't know the legal structure of that yet, John.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we will be able to handle any kind of reciprocity over across the sites if those that prove necessary.
Okay. I think that's all. I'm interested in incentives. I'm interested in access off of 24th and how busy that gets. And I'm concerned. I guess I think you're correct that there's not going to be any restrictions turning right off of Western, driving south. But I think there's going to be a lot of restrictions turning left from Western onto the property on Western. And I think there'll be difficulty turning left on 24th Street to get into the project. And I'm not sure how to mitigate that. And I know there's been talk in the neighborhood for years about getting a light there that would allow a left-hand turn safely and would dissuade circulation onto the project from turning left on Western Adams and then circulating up through Gramercy and then down into 24th Street. So I'm not sure. Do you have any idea what might be proposed or what DOT might require or ask for as far as left-hand turns moving northbound off of Western?
Not at this time. Again, it's preliminary with DOT, but we do not know what they would require at this point.
Okay. Those are the questions I had. Anyone else have any other questions in the audience? Laura?
Yeah, I'm just continuing to pursue this a little. So, and Michael, you know this, even Shaul has had a conversation with us about, that street light, but it wasn't just really about circulation within the residential neighborhood. It is that, but it was also about the stoplight thing is also about not pushing traffic all the way through the neighborhood and then on to Arlington, because Arlington has even worse problems. And we're trying to reduce traffic for, to benefit both Kinney Heights and West Adams Avenues. The fewer cars on Arlington would be the better solution. So my technical question, I did, I have a hard time reading plans when they're not big plans set up on a kitchen table, but it looks like probably properly the commercial parking underneath the northerly portion by the freeway does not connect. You can't drive through underneath these buildings through the residential and then out on 24th. Is there any legal reason why there couldn't be a driving pathway underneath, so that people may be able to enter from Western but exit on 24th if they were in the commercial portion? Because I know that a lot of time there's like walls between commercial and residential for the parking, but I don't know if that's a requirement or just a practical thing. Because again, I'm really concerned about trying to push traffic in and out just south of that little, whatever you want to call it, median triangle skinny thing, in and out of the parcel is for people who want to go northbound on Western, not so much a problem leaving the project and going southbound. And so the, you know, that's my egress and access concerns. And then I just want to ask a question back to the former hospital building that's been adaptively reused. It was also approved on the rooftop to be a combination of a restaurant and open space for the residents. And I'm pretty sure COVID hit, et cetera, there's no restaurant under construction on the top of that building. Would that potentially be happening? Because people were actually excited about having a restaurant with a view. Would that potentially be happening in the future years when everything is built and there's now 450 units or thereabouts on the greater site? Would we be seeing that restaurant happening, if you know?
I don't know, Laura.
And I can answer that one. This is Oliver. We're still anticipating that a restaurant user will take that space at some point. And you hit the nail on the head with COVID. Any interest we had fizzled pretty quickly. But we are still reaching out to potential tenants. They are still interested. You know, even if the views to the west are partially impacted by the new construction, there's still uninterrupted views to the east and downtown and the hills. So it's still a lovely location, still a place that I think will be of great interest to tenants. But I think you're right that COVID certainly dampened restaurateur spirits a bit, but seems to be reviving slowly.
Okay, thank you.
Teresa?
Thank you, John. I have several questions. I'm going to address them to you. First, the discussion about a stoplight. This 24th Street is the same exact layout. The off-ramps on Arlington are the exact same layouts as the off-ramps on Western. And my constituents that wanted to have a light on Arlington were told that they could not do that because DOT or you guys, I think it was transportation, said that there's a legal minimum amount of feet off of an off-ramp before you can have a stoplight, because they don't want to have traffic backing up onto the highway. So as I understand the conversation now, we do not know that ordinance or the exact number. And this developer is looking to possibly get clarification, but then to override that. Is that true, John?
That I don't know. It sounds like the applicant isn't even sure about what DOT is going to be asking for.
We are. If DOT asks for it, I think we're happy to put a light in there. And if I think
no,
Laura,
are you requesting a light?
I'm not aware that we've made a request. And again, we're early on in the process. I'm not sure what DOT is going to require out of us.
Yeah, so I've never heard of a developer asking to put in public facilities. Usually it's the cities asking to do something, but it seems to me, I'm not sure what the study DOT requires to find out what the impacts are going to be. You can see here, if it's impossible to turn off of Western, if they don't allow that, which they might not, they could put signs up saying no left turn, that there will be some traffic impacts down Western Adams and St. Andrews. So I don't know how that impacts. Obviously the project won't be thwarted or reduced because of access issues like that. If it didn't have access at all, it would be thwarted, but there is access off of a public way. But I think, I think I would, if I was a developer, I'd want to know what my requirement was going to be or where my turns could be or couldn't be, because that would really impact how my tenants or residents would be able to use it. But it sounds like that bridge hasn't been crossed yet.
Again, we're early with DOT, but if this neighborhood council would want to pass a resolution for a light, we're happy to get behind it. I think it's beneficial to the neighborhood, and I know Laura and I have had this conversation for many years. about the importance of putting a light there to increase safety, not just for vehicles, but for
That's
pedestrians.
okay. Thank you very much, Michael. But that's what I'm talking about. John, this is my other point, John, to you, that Mr. Gonzalez just stated that he and Laura have a long-term or have been good friends. And I'd like to make sure that Laura is acting on behalf of what's best for the UNNC and not for the developer. And I'm hoping, John, that you can make sure that that's the case. Yes, maybe Laura would like a light there, but she certainly didn't want a light on Arlington. And the people in my community were very upset about how that whole situation played out. So I just want to state that for the record.
Okay.
Also, John, can you explain to me when a public facility like a light or stoplight or some other utility is desired by a developer, how does that work? Does the council district approve that? Does the Department of Transportation approve it? Is the developer, do they petition the neighborhood council? What is the process for that being funded and being approved? John, if you could explain that.
So funded, I know if a developer wants something, they would pay for it. If a development requires an upgrade like that, whether it's a light or moving a telephone pole, anything that improving sidewalks, bulb outs, that's all cost borne by a developer. So that's all private money. Again, I've never heard of a developer asking for a light unless it's usually it's usually DOT that does studies or requests studies to inform what their decision is about what kind of public infrastructure they want.
Well, we just heard Mr. Gonzalez say that he and Laura have had over the years many discussions about having a light in that corner.
Just to clarify, let's not conflate that with a request by the applicant. This is just a conversation that Laura and I have had as we've walked the site and talked about the site. But let's be clear, what I meant by that language.
Okay.
And Laura and I have known each other for a while now, so let's not conflate that with the request. We've simply said, it could use a light at this intersection. Whether or not that happens, we have to see if DOT thinks it makes sense here. It's not our decision.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question has to do with the actual design. And I see that you have some courtyard areas. And I'm wondering about the planting of trees. And I don't know if you know this, but we're very conscientious about trying to plant native trees. And one of the trees we're trying to promote are the coast live oaks. And they have a large root zone area. And I don't know if that would be possible for you to incorporate that in the design in your courtyard area to have the coast live oaks planted. Thank you.
On the tails of that question, is there underground parking? Are you proposing a P1 or P2 level?
Yes, one level.
Is it over the whole site?
That I'm checking that right now.
John, I don't know if you
Yes.
know this, but in Santa Monica, there are developments that include an area in the parking to allow for deep root development of native trees. So it is something that can, parking can be built around, underground parking can be constructed to allow development, the root development of these larger trees.
That is correct. It's especially, usually you can't park into the corners of a project, so we call it knocking out parts of the P1 level, which is means the basement level of parking, to have pockets where trees can be planted. It is very expensive, so you usually get resistance, but we have done it successfully. We do have one in Santa Monica at the corner of Lincoln and Broadway that has a beautiful native sycamore now growing on it that's getting rather large, and it does make a difference. Laura?
Yes. So just for some clarity, on November 4th, 2020, UNNC actually adopted a resolution requesting that the city initiate the following traffic and parking improvements. And number 1 is a stoplight at Western and 24th Street. Number 2 is a stoplight at Adams and Montclair. Number 3 is angled parking on the north side of Washington between Gramercy and Cimarron. 4 is, I mean, there's nothing related to this, but angled parking on 4th Avenue south of Washington to the alley on the east side of the street. And 5 is a no parking zone during morning rush hour on the north side of Venice from 6th to the curve where the Click School driveway is. So I don't believe Michael had anything to do with that adopted resolution. And that resolution was the result of a change in leadership at Council District 10. So each one of those items had been separately adopted in conjunction with various, different development projects throughout UNNC over the prior several years. So the 24th and Western one, again, related, I believe, now if memory serves, it actually related to the hotel approval, but it might have related to the adaptive reuse of the doctor's hospital approval. So we were pulling together the different initiatives that we had been requesting, and so far to this date have fallen on deaf ears, but nothing to do with any personal relationship I have with Michael Gonzalez. And obviously, a stoplights at either end would be fine with me. In other words, 24th and Arlington as well. But the purpose of a stoplight at Western and 24th in large part would be to direct vehicular traffic back to Western and not out to Arlington, because of course we want to reduce the traffic impacts on Arlington. So I do want to clarify that. And otherwise, I'd like to hear from other people here in the room.
Any other questions, comments?
Eric, did you have something? Because you had brought it up a little earlier before the meeting started.
Yeah, so we operate a school on the campus, 24th Street Elementary, which is kind of, you can see it there. So there are actually 2 schools there. One's a district school, one's a charter school. It's a total of over 1,000 students there. So yeah, I think like generally we're definitely supportive of any measures to improve safety in the community for pedestrians in particular. So the stoplight, we would definitely get behind, anything we can do to get that stoplight there on the corner. That's all.
And Eric, this is Oliver with the applicant. I would love to get your contact information, whether now or through Laura, because we've got a process here, and assuming all goes well and we get approved, I think it's going to be really important to have a good working relationship with you and the elementary school as well. It's much harder to get in touch with someone at LAUSD, so I'm glad that there's a face and a human that we can talk to, at least has connections in with the campus generally. So would love to meet with you and discuss the project and how we can be sensitive to the school as we proceed.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll put my contact info in the chat. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Well, Oliver or Michael, I would like to circle back, if you know, because this might be something more an architect or engineer would know. Is it not legal? I mean, do you have to separate the commercial parking from the residential, or is there a feasible way to move the exiting commercial traffic somehow through the underneath of the residential portion of this project out to 24th? If you know.
I don't, and this is all right. I don't know whether there's law specifically, but I know that LADOT doesn't like having the mix because it creates complication and confusion within the parking structure. And then you get people who get lost, confused. They just prefer not to have that. But it's not impossible as far as I understand it. It's just frowned upon. They don't like people circulating around, looking for parking, going the wrong direction, getting confused. It's less a problem with residential tenants because they usually have assigned stalls and they know where they're going. Commercial tenants who are unfamiliar, they're the ones who tend to get lost, park in residence parking, go down a dead end, something like that, right? And just wreak havoc on a parking structure.
Okay, and again, originally, I mean, I know this is a completely different set of plans and project, but there was essentially just open space west of the former hospital building that was going to be the driveway. I see that it's completely different now. So, but I can't really tell from the site plan if there is space between the doctor's hospital building, and then is there then open space and then this building, meaning space for cars to drive, or is that now more or less eliminated? Because I know that there's the down ramp to go to the parking that's underneath the hospital building. I'm sorry to be pushing this point.
It's okay. It's okay. Let me answer that. The down ramp to the hospital building now connects through to the 2221 building.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the building that's under construction. Yeah, I think that's John's arrow is going over it right now. So that goes into the underground structure. There is an opportunity for the structure to connect to the larger project as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it becomes a little bit complicated at that point because it becomes a small driveway for potentially a lot of cars.
Right.
And
yeah.
And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. I had always assumed that having commercial users exit onto 24th would not be desirable because they would be more apt to cut through the neighborhood. But I'm hearing the opposite from you.
Well, that's for me personally, not necessarily 100% of people. But I do think it's all tied up to whether or not there's that stoplight, because if they can't get out on Western, they can't get out on Western. Meaning if somebody can't easily turn left northbound onto Western, it doesn't really matter if they're exiting in the middle of the block or on 24th Street. Either way, they can't head north easily. So they'll have to circulate through the community to be able to turn around and go northbound. So I don't know how other people feel. I do know that we had some very lively meetings. They were in person when we were first talking about these developments, and we had a lot more turnout from Kinney Heights, and they kind of didn't really want more cars. They already have the schools, plural, because there's also Whitney, traffic at some times of the day. That's not all day long and not on weekends. So there's circulation problems for 24th, which again create issues on Arlington that affect West Adams Avenues as well as Kinney Heights. So trying to take just a bigger picture look. But I'm not I'm not a traffic engineer, and B, I don't live in Kinney Heights. So, and C, I don't see anybody who does live in Kinney Heights at this meeting. So I think that's another thing. We need to do some outreach to the folks who live right there to find out what they would want.
So speaking of outreach, what are your next steps for entitlements? What's your schedule? When do you hope to be entitled and start permitting? What's your schedule? And when might we see you again with a more formal presentation about what you're doing?
Sure. Thank you, John, for the question. We're early in the process. This is a case that will go to City Planning Commission. It has to undergo environmental review. Prior to Planning Commission, there is a hearing officer testimony hearing, and then the full Planning Commission. You know, I'd anticipate we have at least 6 months before we get there, if not 7. That's optimistic. City Planning has been a little slow to move things around these days.
And that would be for a vote or for an initial hearing?
I can't anticipate what commission will do, right? But I anticipate that, or I would be hopeful that it's only a single hearing with a vote up or down. I can't determine what they're going to do.
Is it your intent to come to the neighborhood council before that to get support, or otherwise either support through the council district, which is having its own issues at the moment? What is your intent as far as outreach goes, and what do you need from us? Or if you choose, can you just go forward and get to the city planning commission without input from us? What's your intent?
You know, in my experience, if you end up when you end up at planning commission and there is no input from the neighborhood councils, they frown upon it. We'd obviously love your support. I think I can say we'd be happy to come back at some point in the future and present the project in more detail.
Great. So if you could let me know. I think if you don't have my email address, I'll send it to you.
Great.
And then you can coordinate that through me to get on the agenda. But yes, as soon as you're ready, I think we'd like a full presentation, and I think especially to start sorting out. And we know you'll have to go to. I assume you'll have to get through your access approvals, or at least get some hint of what the access was going to be before you get your entitlements, just in case DOT turns your project on its head and you have to re-entitle it. But I think I think you've heard some of the concerns at this meeting. It's mostly revolving around access, it sounds. I'm eager to see what it looks like and how the buildings interact with each other. And so I think as soon as you have a vision for those concerns, I think it would be good for you to come back and have a talk.
Certainly.
All right.
Yeah, so Oliver, I know when we had some of the other projects on Crenshaw and on Adams, you ended up having some really good non-UNNC, I mean, we helped set it up, but meetings with West Jefferson Park and West Adams Avenue's residents. And those were candid conversations, not subject to the Brown Act, et cetera. Would you want us to help you set up something with Kinney Heights neighbors?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure that, to John's point, if access is going to be a crucial concern and interest, I would like us to be just a little bit further along so we can answer some questions. I'm happy to have a listening session before then, but I assume that people will want answers, and I just don't know that we'll be in a position to provide them quite yet. But once we have some information, I am absolutely open to the same type of discussion that we had for the Crenshaw project.
Okay.
And just let me repeat, I'm also interested in what the building is looking like.
Yeah, sorry.
And making sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So please, when you have that developed too, please bring that forward. Any other concerns? What would be? I think we heard from Teresa about what your tree program might be, and how you might improve a tree program that would otherwise be over a podium with some mitigations there. At key points, I think would be if you could see how you can address that request would be great.
Teresa, that was the live oak, coastal live oak?
Yes, coast live oak,
Coastal live
or
oak.
any native tree, but the coast live oak has a beautiful shade canopy. This is very, abutting the 10, so we have to worry about the urban heat island effect coming off of the 10, the pollutants that come off the 10, but there's a beautiful canopy that comes with the coast live oak. So that provides shade and it helps mitigate the pollutants.
And for myself, knowing how difficult it would be to grow a coast live oak on a podium, I think the idea of carving out portions of the garage, especially at the corners, where it doesn't impact your parking program, would be a great gesture to mitigate the scale and greenery around the front.
Or any native. I mean, I'm open to any type of native tree planting, John.
Yep, in real soil that can reach down into the earth.
Yes.
So yeah, so it can grow to full height and not just a podium plant that will likely not do so well. Laura?
Yeah, well, even on the heels of this, I'm looking at this overview, which is dated when? Earlier this year?
It looks like
Maybe.
it was in February, March.
Yeah, it does seem there's not really very many trees at all in the public realm around this building and nearby. So, so we have asked recently some of the other developers that we've spoken with, different projects around UNNC area, if they would be willing to kind of overplant, meaning not just the trees, street trees that were required for their own projects, but look at sort of the adjacent parkways and add some additional trees there and commit to helping, pay for their watering while getting established. So if you could consider that's again, just something to think about, to come back when we're having more of a case approval kind of discussion. But because obviously you probably have to do trees right at your project, but I'm seeing some barrenness of trees nearby.
Yeah, so certainly open to that. I think, at some level, it's not our decision. So if the property owners who abut those parkways are open and willing to work with us, I'm sure we can find a way to
Right.
make that
I
happen.
think what could be your decision though is how the trees are irrigated and cared for, and making
Right.
sure that they're not put in the ground and forgotten. We've had many developments that have
Right.
dead trees at year 3. So I think that could be something as to have an enhanced care for them, so to make sure that they thrive. And so I think because I think the city requirements will probably be scant along those lines. So I think that would be
Yeah, John, I was
good
really,
approach.
that's a really good idea, but I was kind of also referring to, like, say, across the street.
Hmm.
If trees are planted there would need to be a donation to a KYCC or LA Conservation Corps for 3 to 5 years of watering and maintenance, is where I'm kind of going. In front of the other properties where they can't pay for irrigation, obviously.
I see some good electrical wires there, so DOT.
Oh, I'm just saying. I'm just saying,
Anyway, yeah, so
we would like us to have more trees, that's all.
yeah, so the suggestion is some kind of public benefit
Yeah,
that mitigates, that makes this a gesture to improve the streetscape here.
thank you.
Any other comments that the development team could take back to their shop and consider? Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. We look forward to hearing from you in the coming months. And please, I'll make sure I get your contact information so you can be in contact with me.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thanks.
Bye.
We can go on to the next item. Laura, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm having trouble getting to the agenda tonight. If you could
Oh.
pull that up.
The next item is just a further discussion, reiterate UNNC's previous request to install a stoplight at Western Avenue and 24th Street. We've been discussing it between the time, obviously, that we put this on the agenda and today. Circumstances are currently changed such that I'm not sure who we would write a letter to if we were to do. And anyway, Taylor is here as the Mobility and Transportation Subcommittee Chair. So I think the question I would only have is, do we even consider this item today, or do we wait till life plays out a little more?
Laura, can you bring the agenda back up, please?
Sure, I can do that. But Taylor is here anyway.
Yeah, I'm personally, I don't know if this is that urgent too, given what we just heard from the developer, that they don't seem to, there seem to be a lot of options on the table. If this is already passed once and there's already been a motion once though, and everybody all agrees with this, then I'm all for reiterating that. I think it's good for us to say our thoughts multiple times.
So it is a motion that was already passed, as Laura said, back in November 2020. So
well, and some other time previous to that I I wasn't, I saw Teresa posted, is there a BAC? I'm sure there's one from November 2020. I'm not sure I could find one from iteration number one. I was not on executive committee at that time. So it was passed once, and then we grouped them together in November a year ago as a presentation, a letter to our then new council member who was going to be, whoever it was going to be. We didn't even know who it was on the day we passed that, I think, or maybe we did know. Might have been right after the election. I don't know. But the point was to present to a new elected official things we wanted to, we had already passed, but we lumped them together in a single resolution. So I could track backwards maybe. And then this was on the agenda to reiterate it based on, as the agenda item says, basically, and my count might be wrong, it's maybe 465 residential units, not 470, but it's a lot of residential units and more than 70,000 square feet of commercial, retail space. So,
which is a lot.
It's a lot.
A lot of
I
retail.
mean, it's a lot. But to Teresa's point, we should not be doing things that would make other neighbors feel that we're not paying attention to their issues. And so that would be my only concern, because I know that there's some people who are upset about how we didn't handle yet the Arlington issues, although I feel this would help with Arlington.
So I think we can talk about that in number 7 if we wish to.
Sure.
Teresa.
Thank you, John, and thank you for acknowledging that, Laura. I was just trying to find the BAC on this. I'd like to see it, and once I read it, I don't know. I want to read it and then see if we need to bring it back to the board to make a motion on all of the. You said there was Montclair. There were 4 other intersections.
Yeah, and some of it's about striped parking and not about lights. I mean, it was a bunch of transit and mobility. I will send it to you and to Taylor, because I'm sure he's never seen it either. The resolution, finding the BAC might be more difficult.
Okay, well, that's what I need to see. I want to know who voted on it. I want to know.
Sure.
I want to see that. And I just looked in our Google folder, and I don't see. I mean, I see some BACs from 2020, but that one is not there. But we know how our Google Drive is. So
I do.
Okay.
Regardless, we can opt to bring anything we want back to the board, whether it's that exactly or something that's changed or something. So we can.
And I just want to say, John, that I am not. It's not that I'm against having a light at 24th and Western. There's a school down there. I heard what the principal Eric was talking about. I get it. I also saw that there's a stairwell or something that goes down, or it looks like it's an old stairwell that goes underground or something. I just wanted to be clear that, as Laura just mentioned, that the same consideration was not given to the folks at 24th and Arlington. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to
Wait, what are we doing with this? So let me just say one more thing. This item is not on the November 4 agenda. I had put it on as so executive committee does the best we can with crystal balls to approve in advance what's going to be on an agenda. And this item was scratched out. We just have too many things on that agenda. But Taylor, I know you're going to ask me next. Yes, the other item that we had too many things for last month will be on the agenda this month. So
I'm going to support Taylor's feeling that there's nothing hot on this right now. It's too early. We don't have enough information, and that we have until we see what's really happening with this project. I would think we should keep our opinions to ourselves until we have all the information, and then make a new motion, a separate something that's supportive or not supportive or different than what we think we need for this to handle whatever's the changes that are happening at this corner. So that would be and I think that's an anti-motion to just table it till another time when we have more information.
I think if the chair wants to table, the chair can.
Okay, I'm gonna move to myself to table. Anyone have any objections to that? Okay, great, thanks.
And can I take this off the share?
Yes, so number 7, Teresa, now we can talk about previous case in which the
No, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want.
I'm just opening up if you did want to
Okay.
talk about it, but
No,
that
I
was always
don't.
an option. So I just have one update. I was delighted to go past the Van Ness project, which I fought so much last year to fix. It is under construction. They've repaired the buildings that were about a day away from being demolished, repaired and painted those 2 character buildings on Van Ness, and they're starting construction of the 4 units behind them. So I'm going to call that a success story. And I've spoken to the developer recently, and that all is underway. And it makes me very happy to see it. So everyone go down Van Ness, just south of Venice, if you want to see it happening, west side. 1632, I think, is the address.
Right. I do have a follow-up. There was a long hearing at the CPC, which is City Planning Commission, on the housing element. And not surprisingly, they basically adopted it as was presented without regard to comments from anybody. And I don't know how to get our letter considered further at City Council at this time, but perhaps, I don't know if we would need a vote from the board. I think perhaps we should just take it upon ourselves to distribute our approved letter to 14 or 15 council members and not just our own. But I don't know if we would need a vote on that at governing board, or if that's just, we've approved the letter and we can disseminate it however we wish. And
I would think that we don't have to limit our dissemination list. We can mail it to the Pope if we want to. It's an approved letter. So that would be I would think if we can, gosh, I don't know. Teresa, do you have an opinion on that?
Yes, I think we should. If you feel we were unheard and they continue to, and we put a lot of effort into that, into our housing element letter. And I don't know if you were on the meeting. We had the West Adams Avenues meeting. There was a lady, Audrey, somebody, I can't think of her name, but anyway, she read our letter. She was speaking about SB 9.
Audrey
And,
Arlington.
yes, and she said it was a great letter. She said our housing letter was, element letter was great. So if you think it'll be advantageous for us to submit it to the other council members to get some traction, I'm all for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was not on the meeting because I'm not remembering what other Zoom meeting I was on. I will say,
Environmental.
if Audrey was thinking it was great, you know, she's a retired planning official at the city of Beverly Hills.
Career planner.
She is a career planner. So, but my concern is, I mean, I'm dancing around it because, you know, this is a public meeting, but at the moment, we won't have a council member sitting at hearings about this. So I feel that we just need to represent ourselves with all the council members as politely as we can.
I can't see what the risk is or the transgression of sending that letter to whoever we want. We approved it. It's a public letter. It's now public. It's a CIS. It's all these things. And I think, I don't know who presses the button and whether they have the authority to press the button, but I assume a representative of UNC can send that to anyone who asks for it, or everyone they think might be useful. So would it be helpful?
And then obviously, since we have, we also, if I'm not mistaken, we passed a community impact statement related to it. So I can certainly upload it to the city council file as soon as their council file is created, probably next week. So.
Great. Any other updates from past cases?
I just can't remember. An update to the future case on the, I mean, the case we're kind of pending. The oil drill site case, the one that we met about 2 weeks ago, the planning department is kind of slowing the process down just a little. They have some questions to be answered. And I think we sent them off with questions we wanted answered as well. So we'll not be hearing this on November 4 at UNNC. I'm tracking the timing because I don't know if it'll be December or January. And John and I are tracking it, but John, we're going to have one more meeting where it's more discussion, and then a meeting where we might do some decision making. Is sort of have them come back with the answers to the questions with the next meeting, I think.
Yep, it is. That's correct. That's me.
So that's my only other update. So I don't, John and I'll just track the timing, but I expect that we'll have, this probably maybe the next meeting. I don't see any other big open cases so far filed, but again, tomorrow a case could be filed that we need to deal with.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. That concludes.
What about you've got other hands?
Teresa.
Sorry, John. Laura,
and Taylor too.
We did not discuss about Quimby funds with CIM. Can we remember to do that next time, or should I remember? Or
do you want me to just email in my thank you to them? By the way, we'd like to know about your Quimby funds for the next time you come back. Give them more research to do.
Yes, I mean, I'd like to know what I don't know that whole process. I'm trying to wrap it around, get my head around that. But I did want to mention that and find out what allocation and what's going to happen with that money and how we can get some of it for our parks.
So we didn't take a vote on the questions we asked. So I think any one of us can send independent emails, not necessarily representative of the group, but I think just say I'm in the group, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer it for you if they can. So
right.
I think
I have no problem with Laura adding that to her. I don't need to do another letter. Sorry. If you don't mind, Laura, can you just
no, I have to write. I have to send an email thanking them for coming. So
thank you.
Okay.
So
Yes.
I just had a very quick question. So the Adams Boulevard, not in our district, but adjacent to our district, the Adams Boulevard road configuration is mostly done. I think they still have a little bit of paint to do this week, but it's mostly done. So going through the old so the LADOT did do a presentation to the neighborhood council.
Mhm.
And I can see that the West Adams Neighborhood Council has been vigorously in support of the project. I'm curious if this council, this is before I was on the council, did we ever pass a motion related to this, or did we only just get information from the LADOT?
It was handled as a presentation. We did actually ask them, but I don't think we did a vote. We asked them actually to extend it east to 13th Avenue or 12th because of the sheer volume of traffic accidents and fatalities, not just in the last 5 years, but Rena Rubenstein, who lives on 13th near Adams, did a deep dive into historical records and found numerous fatalities even 100 years ago at that same, it's just a strange intersection. So we brought that up. We had the conversation, but I don't think we did any vote. I will say we also have been receiving emails from somebody who lives on Bronson, who's very upset. And it's not you, Taylor.
Herbert?
Yes, I don't know who it is. And I'm just, UNNC is, president at UNNC is just copied on a whole bunch of emails back and forth to the council office. He's very, very angry.
He's been texting me quite a lot. Well, yeah, I had a good hour-long chat with him, and he's very upset. Yeah.
Right. So
is he upset about it not extending?
No.
Oh, he doesn't like it at all. What's happening? Okay.
He's upset that his commute is longer in the mornings. he
Yeah.
said that it's making his mornings very frustrating.
Right. So we're also getting a little bit of feedback about people who bicycle, how great the bike lanes are, but having the dedicated bike lanes is, I think, reduced a traffic lane. I mean, Taylor, I haven't paid that much attention to it. And I wasn't sure I should be even responding to Mr. Sample other than to say UNNC saw a presentation that was available to everyone. It was on Zoom, actually. So that gives us some timing of it. But it's not in our area and we did not, approve it or deny it or anything. But I'm not even sure. I just felt like if I responded, since I saw how all of his responses to the council office as they were responding to him, that's like, no, I might not think UNNC should be responding, but he does live here. He's our stakeholder, so I think I probably have to do it. But I will have to draft something for the executive committee to approve. And I'll run it past you too, Taylor.
Just to keep everybody in the loop. So I gave him info about, so he was upset that he had not heard about the project. And actually here on Bronson, you guys probably didn't get it, but here on Bronson, since we're within like 1,000 feet of the project, we got mailers to our house. So he got mailers. I got 2 mailers actually. All of my neighbors did. I confirmed with people that live next to Herbert that that block got mailers as well. There have been signs on Adams. There have been presentations to both neighborhood councils. There's been a lot of communication about this. So I tried to talk to him about, like, I'm sorry you didn't hear about this, but a lot was done to communicate. And then I kind of stopped engaging because he was still quite upset. So that was all. I just wanted to kind of correct the record for him, that like, and I asked him I was like, what do you expect about communication? And he was like, well, I expected mailers. I was like, that happened. There's an article in the LA Times about it. So it was like, there's a lot of information out in the public about this project.
Right. And probably if you were on UNNC's e-blast, we probably did if not a dedicated e-blast, a highlight come to the meeting. But John, I mean, in Jefferson Park, how many people over time have said, I never knew we're getting an HPOZ?
Yeah, and we spent so many thousands of dollars in mail. Yeah,
it was a C. No, I'm saying, but people said we never knew there was an HPOZ coming, but we spent, well, I can tell you what we spent because West Adams Heritage spent the first round of money and it was about $7,000. And we did bright red door hangers that were 19.5 inches tall, 6.25 inches wide, and they were on every door handle on 2010 different parcels. And some of those are apartment buildings, so there were multiple.
Twice.
Well, and then the second time UNNC paid for it twice, and again, bright red. And when you were in Jefferson Park at that time, it was a sea of red. And we could still, people say that because they were also beautiful, because the first round had history of Jefferson Park and some of the famous personages who had lived there. So people actually kept them. And but still people say, I never knew this was happening. So,
so it's a thing. So Teresa, let's try to make this the last.
This is the last one. I just want to let Taylor know that the Avenues also saw that same presentation because, that's the West Adams Neighborhood Council. So they shared it with us and we had it at a meeting. And if Herbert lives in on Bronson, then he probably is part of the Avenues. And maybe, I don't know if he attends our meetings, but we saw that same presentation before it happened. So not only the UNNC, but the Avenues had the same presentation.
Okay, with that, any other old items? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you, everybody. It is 8:44. Have a good evening. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.